This week's arrest of a man for hacking a company linked to the national broadband network stoked fears about how vulnerable our systems are to attack. The alleged hacker has been described as a self-taught amateur, but this weekend cyber experts are gathering in Perth to discuss the threats from professionals. One of those is John Blackburn from the defence think tank, the Kokoda Foundation. I spoke to him in Canberra earlier. John Blackburn, welcome to 7:30.
Good evening, Eliza. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, how concerned should we be about this man who's been charged with hacking into a service provider linked to the national broadband network?
I think we should be concerned, but not just because of this incident. You've got a case here of an amateur guy. He's an unemployed truck driver. He's managed to get into a system through a lot of protective layers. Thankfully, he was detected and it was controlled. But the issue that you should be more concerned about is imagine what the professionals are doing, from the espionage groups to the crime syndicates.
Also, it just seems sort of by luck that people found him bragging about this instance in a chat room. How did the real professionals go about it?
Well, for a start, they wouldn't brag. They've got far more sophisticated tools of how they go in and do reconnaissance on systems, how they embed viruses or controlling software, and then they wait to when they need to use it. So they're there for a purpose, either to extract information or to go and take money out of an organisation. They're not there for their egos.
So would a case like this that we know about just be the tip of the iceberg about what's actually going on in the cyber world?
Absolutely. We've seen a significant increase in attacks in the last couple of years. There's an interesting report out from the Government Accountability Office in America in the last 2 days that talks about a tripling of the malware or the viruses since 2009, and a significant increase in the last 12 months on attacks on government, organisations and industry. So we're seeing a rapid increase in this. The issue is what else is behind there that we haven't seen? Perhaps where agencies or crime syndicates have been in there preparing the ground for something that they're going to do in the future. Why
is this occurring?
It's a huge range. Down right at the bottom end, you can have these hacktivists or people who are just doing it for ego, just to cause a problem, the anonymous groups you hear about overseas. That runs all the way through to people who will be doing it for crime purposes. There's a potential of those who are just trying to disrupt or cause problem eventually, like terrorism, to espionage agencies, right the way through to potentially other governments who are trying to position themselves to gather intelligence information.
So who are these people targeting?
They're targeting everybody right down to the individual, because in some cases, if they can't get into a large organisation, they can get into an individual's computers. They might be able to learn something about the organisation they work for or their passwords and use that to attack. So everybody is vulnerable.
Now, there's a case here recently, Colin Barnett, our Premier, sort of disclosed in Parliament that ASIO was actually helping us investigate a potential attack here. Are we to think, maybe China's behind that attack, wanting to find more information about some of these, very lucrative businesses operating here in the state?
Well, China has a significant capability in this area, as you've seen on many internet reports, and particularly in Western Australia with the resource industries, there's a lot of highly valuable information and intellectual property.
So what do we do about this?
The first thing to say from the study is we can see some pretty good activity or actions taken by government to date. There's a really good start. But the conclusion we came to in this study is that the threat level is growing faster than our reaction to it. And so therefore we're not doing enough, and that's not just a government problem, that's a problem for industry, small and large. It's also a problem for the individual. Everybody's got a responsibility. You can't just turn around and say, oh, it's the government's problem, they'll fix it.
So is it the problem here that it's hard to get a coordinated approach to this issue?
Yeah, cyber's so hard to get your hands around. I mean, what does it mean? It's, everyone uses the internet, but it's very hard to actually grasp what it actually is, how it's going to affect you. And a lot of people think, well, nobody's going to bother me, why would they? They'll go and attack that big company down the road or the bank. That's not the case. And we think something like the Slip, Slop, Slap campaign from years ago about skin cancer is what we're going to need to do in this country so that everybody becomes aware of how important the cyber threat is and how important it is for us to focus on this and actually fight it and protect our way of life.
So what would that campaign look like? Just basics for people to do every day when they use the internet?
Yeah, well, we think you should start teaching children in primary school all the way through the basics of computer hygiene, how to look after your computer, how to protect yourself as best you can. Now, the high-end threats are beyond what the capacity is for a lot of standard virus checking software.
So, John, finally, if we don't do this, what's the risk to the average person?
The risk to the average person is there is 1 million computers a year being infected by viruses that can be damaging. Eventually people will find their private information or their bank information or the services they rely on day to day may not be available. So it is as important as thinking it's not only your personal security, it's your very way of life and your economy in this country that can be affected if we don't take adequate measures and steps to prepare.
OK, John Blackburn, thanks for your time.
Very welcome, Eliza.